If I only knew, by Wanderlove, Chapter 12. Once, long ago, on a mission to some far-flung planet in some distant, forgotten corner of the galaxy, Obi-Wan had witnessed two half-feral loth cats circle each other in a back alley, muscles bunched and ready to bounce at the smallest of provocations. It had been both fascinating and stressful for Obi-Wan to watch, the moment bouncing on a knife's edge. He had never been quite sure if he should linger and watch or flee to a safer distance. Watching Shmi Skywalker and Mace Windu interact inspires a very similar set of feelings. This now, the 10th such calm meeting Obi-Wan has hosted since the inception of Operation D-Chip, which was an absolutely terrible name, everyone agrees, but Anakin had this way of just declaring a thing to be so and dragging everyone along with him by virtue of his stubborn persistence alone, nearly 3 months ago. And yet he still feels as if he must carefully moderate each and every call so that he is prepared to duck and run for cover at any moment. But while they didn't seem to like each other very much, Obi-Wan likes to think that each did have an immense sort of respect for the other. He thinks, as the only person close enough to both of them to know them each personally and individually, he's the only one who has noticed. Obi-Wan swears they both seem to derive some perverse pleasure out of burning each other. He knows for certain that Mace has always been one of the Order's great philosophers and debaters, but that since assuming the title of Grand Master, it has been difficult to find anyone willing to go toe-to-toe with him in any sort of verbal exchange, and Shmi tends to respect passion and commitment to one's beliefs, even if she disagrees with the beliefs themselves. So Obi-Wan is fairly confident that deep down they are both enjoying these interactions too much to actually murder one another. Fairly confident. This plot is absurdly risky, Master Windu argues, voice as even and calm as if he is commenting on the weather. Brain surgery. Surely the electromagnetic pulse disabling the chips is sufficient.
As long as the chip remains, Depot can and will find a way, Shmi replies placidly, her hollow flickering the smallest bit. Small though it may be, we should not underestimate the cunning of whoever tricked the Jedi Order into using a slave army.
Mace's nostrils flare infinitesimally, the only sign of his displeasure at Shmi's pointed jab. Rex, Wolf, and Baru, the other 3 members of this committee, shift uncomfortably. It had been agreed that trying to schedule regular comm calls with all members of Operation D-Chip was logistically infeasible given the speed at which they needed to move, so instead they had compromised on having 2 representatives from each of the 3 groups. Mace and Obi-Wan for the Jedi, Beru and Shmi for the freed peoples of Tatooine, and Rex and Wolf for the clones. Mace waits a moment more before continuing. But the point remains, though, that brain surgery remains a risky option. From a physical health perspective, the 2 clones you tested it on are both still the recovery, yes?
Which is why I'm requesting you send a Jedi healer to Tatooine to aid us in the next few operations. Kat and the others seem to believe that the Jedi can perform miracles and will speed up pace significantly.
Of course, Obi-Wan interrupts before they can really get started. We use a similar tactic to bolster the clone's energies and healing factors in the field. Every brother I've talked to has expressed a willingness to do whatever it takes to get the chips out permanently, Rex asserts. Wolfie nods. Obi-Wan had initially resisted their desire to tell all of the clones of the chip, which he didn't, while he didn't doubt their loyalty. Sharing the information with over 1 million men seemed like a very poor decision to their stated goal of keeping Operation D-Chip a secret. But Rex had only shrugged when Obi-Wan had delicately tried to raise the point. It's not like anyone pays much attention to us. You're already telling all the active generals with battalions. For us to even accidentally leak the information to anyone else, someone other than our Jedi would have to actually initiate a conversation with us. Can you name a single senator? Organa and Amidala don't count. Who would even try? Master Windu sighs, bringing Obi-Wan back to the present moment. While I appreciate the clone's faith, bolstering another being with the Force is a learned skill and not one that all of us could do well. And as you can imagine, it's a skill set very hard to ban right now. I don't even know who we could spare. Master Windu says. Shmi narrows her eyes.
Did you not promise to make this endeavor a priority just 3 standard months ago? She demands. Surely, for a professed priority, you could spare 1 or 2 Jedi.
He's not trying to be difficult, Shmi, Obi-Wan interrupts yet again. Honestly, this is even worse than having to babysit Anakin and Master Windu. We don't have any spare healers lying around. Master Che is already struggling, even with the steps we've taken to rush healer padawans through their apprenticeships. What about one of the generals, sir? Wolfie interjects gruffly. You all use the same methods during our battles. Yes, but those are in even higher demand. Obi-Wan sighs, rubbing at the bridge of his nose. Not a general, then, but a commander. You sound as if you already have a suggestion. Master Windu says. Yes, sir. Wolf replies, tone as clipped and brusque as ever. Obi-Wan can understand why a man so averse to emotional displays has gotten along so well with Master Plo Koon. Most humans found the Keldor's anti-ox mask disquieting, as if concealed the mouth and eyes, 2 of their own species' key emotional indicators. Commander Gree has grown particularly concerned for his course Padawan, Commander Maris Offie, and has been asking us to pass in missions that will take her away from the front. Concern? Obi-Wan asks, with a frown and a glance over to Master Windu. It is the first time he is hearing of such concerns, and based on the quickly quelled look of surprise, then disturbance on Master Windu's face, the first any member of the council is hearing of it. I believe she expressed some disturbing comments to Commander Gree and other members of the 41st in passing. Wolf says, I do not know the details, only that she has begun to question her role in the war, and that Gree believes that a mission away from the front, focused on more traditional values such as peace and compassion, would go a long way toward helping her find her place. She certainly has sufficient experience with battlefield triage, Obi-Wan says, though it is difficult to keep his voice totally free of concern. He makes a note to discuss the matter with Luminara as soon as possible. We would welcome any help you could provide, Beru adds, her voice low, sweet, and no nonsense. And you can let Commander Green know that we will take excellent care of his commander while she is with us. We'll pass it along. He'll appreciate the reassurance, but I'm sure he'll insist on providing a list with detailed instructions on how to take care of Commander Offie. Rex replies, lips twitching. The 41st Padawan is a tough nut to crack. She doesn't warm up quickly to outsiders.
Of course, Shmi says, inclining her head. Beru can be your point of contact for this matter. I'm sure she'll be happy to arrange a call with Commander Gree to discuss everything with him directly.
Very well. Officially, the Council will reassign Commander Offie on a long-term humanitarian outreach mission to the freed peoples of Tatooine. It'll be dismissed easily enough. It's hardly suspicious to cultivate a diplomatic relationship with the government that controls our access to several key hyperspace lanes.
Master Windu confirms, crossing his arms over his chest. As I've said before, Shmi responds with a pleasant smile, the freed peoples of Tatooine make no claim of control over those lanes. Your passage is entirely up to Hondo Ochnaka.
And the fact that his pirates always seem to target those that do not treat with you or pay your exorbitant tolls.
You've obviously never worked with Hondo. If I knew how to control him, believe me, I would. Besides, I would hardly call our tolls exorbitant. They are 3/4 of the Hutt's prices.
Of course. If that's all, Wolf interrupts. Some of us have a war to win. I think that's all for today. Thank you, Wolf. Just make sure to send Grease con codes along to Beru. Obi-Wan says, May the Force be with you. Wolf signs out with a sharp nod, Beru following shortly afterward with a murmur goodbye. Rex salutes and exits the small office off the bridge they've designated for these meetings, and for a moment, he's left alone with Shmi and Master Windu. The older Jedi Master regards Shmi with ill-concealed suspicion. Obi-Wan clears his throat, breaking up the staring contest.
If it pleases you, I'd like to speak with Obi-Wan about a personal favor,
Shmi says archly. Master Windu waves a hand and waits expectantly.
Privately.
Skywalkers, Master Windu mutters. By the Force be with you, Obi-Wan. He signs off. Hold on one more moment, Obi-Wan warns as he transfers the comm transmission to his vambrace and waves a hand over the doorpad. I'd like to take this call in my quarters, if you don't mind. A long day, you know.
Of course, Shmi replies easily. We are both civilized beings. I'm sure we can make idle chit-chat. I welcome the chance to catch up with you without Mace Windu hovering over both our shoulders.
I think he's warming up to you, Obi-Wan offers. Shmi rolls her eyes. That's one particular gesture Anakin inherited from his mother. They don't look much alike physically, but it is at times like these when Obi-Wan sees so much of Anakin in Shmi and of Shmi in Anakin. Her eyes are considerably warmer, fonder when she focuses on him.
Maybe, maybe not. How are you doing, Obi-Wan? Annie tells me that you're hardly sleeping. He worries about you, you know.
Shmi says. Obi-Wan raises an eyebrow and for a brief panic moment wonders if Anakin has told his mother why he's so intimately aware of Obi-Wan's sleep habits.
Ah, and here I thought you kept me on the line to discuss some favor.
Obi-Wan replies dryly. Shmi levels him with an unimpressed look at his sidestepping of her question.
I can multitask,
She declares, and waits.
I'm fine, Shmi.
Obi-Wan replies with a sigh.
Not doing well, but I'm surviving. I think that's best I can expect for the rest of this war.
They should not have dumped so much on your shoulders.
Shmi frowns.
I know you're a Jedi, but it's too much for any one man.
My second-in-command, Cody, has been a great help, Obi-Wan responds, shrugging. Sometimes we confiscate a liter of Fives' best not-quite-regulation moonshine, lock ourselves inside my office and race to see who can finish all of their paperwork first. Loser has to chug whatever's left in one sitting.
I would dearly like to try some of that moonshine.
No, you really wouldn't, Obi-Wan says, making a face at the memory of his nose and throat burning at the taste of cheap alcohol. Shmi smiles.
I doubt it can be much worse than Lailana. We mash up desert succulents and ferment them until it burns the eyes and tastes like absolute shit. It was the one thing Depot never even tried to take from us. What could they do it? No one enjoyed it except the crazy slaves. We don't, of course, but we did enjoy the look on their faces when we took whole shots of it without blinking. Our amused children do not flinch at the taste of alcohol.
Shmi, I hate to be the one to tell you this, Obi-Wan replies, voice as dry as a desert, but your son is the biggest lightweight I have ever had the misfortune to drink with.
Really?
She blinks, looking taken aback. Obi-Wan nods, a mischievous look in his eyes.
I can ask the clones. They might have some holo videos I can share.
Oh, Annie.
She sighs, and they share a chuckle. Obi-Wan has finally arrived at his small two-room suite of quarters, and he lets himself in, collapsing into his office chair with a huffed-out breath. He unclips his vambrace and sets it on top of the desk, so that he can look Shmi in the eye without having to constantly raise his arm.
Now, what did you really want to discuss?
Obi-Wan continues, once he's finished finding a comfortable spot in his distinctly uncomfortable chair.
I have a friend on the Kiros colony, a Togruto named Rushdie. Last I heard before he stopped picking up my comms was that they had detected a large Providence-class destroyer in the system, Count Dooku's flagship. That was 4 rotations ago.
What do you need?
Can you send someone to check in on him?
And by someone, I take you mean quite a lot of someones, backed up with sufficient firepower, no?
Yes, I think it would be necessary. Rushdie and his people are pacifists, artisans. If the Confederacy did decide to attack, they would have had little defense.
Not much room for pacifists in the galaxy these days, Obi-Wan sighs.
Yes, well, Rushdie's always been a bit of an idealist, and I can't complain too much. He opened his colony to several escaped slaves back in the day. I sent the ones who needed some peace and quiet to him, and those ideals were very good for them, I think.
Well, receiving a credible report of Count Dooku's whereabouts means that I am obliged to at least send a battalion, maybe 2.
He gives Shmi a suspicious look.
But you probably knew that. Did Rushdie really tell you that?
Obi-Wan, please, if I had wanted to lie to a Jedi General and waste the Republic's time, I would have asked Mace to stay on the line. Rushdie specifically mentioned it as a point of hope. He believed that Count Dooku would be easier to negotiate with, kinder, than General Grievous. I urged him to take his people and flee. Depot wears many masks, but it does not change what is underneath. But I doubt he listened. She replies, shaking her head. Please, Obi-Wan, I am asking this as a personal favor. Rushdie, for all our disagreements on his ideals, is a dear friend.
Anakin and I will investigate the matter personally, Obi-Wan reassures her. We're on patrol only a few systems over, but it's been relatively quiet, and we can certainly be spared for a week or 2.
Thank you.
Of course, me.
Obi-Wan responds, giving her a tight smile.
Our personal connection notwithstanding, you and the freed people of Tatooine have helped the Jedi Order with so much, especially considering the matter of the chips. It's only fair that we return the favor once in a while.
Shmi, the smugglers are demanding... Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you were on a call. Someone says from off-screen. Shmi glances to the side briefly.
No issue, Kaiga. We were just wrapping up.
She turns back to Obi-Wan.
Duty calls. Please let Annie know I said hello. And let me know what you discover on Kiros as soon as possible. How far out are you?
7 rotations, probably.
Obi-Wan responds, doing some quick math.
But with Anakin pushing the engines, we'll probably make it in 6 rotations. I'll message you once we drop out of hyperspace, and then once again once we've made contact with the colonists.
I'll be waiting. Farewell, my son. May Ar-Amu be with you.
She replies in her customary farewell.
And may the Force be with you.
They each cut the connection. Obi-Wan only sits still for a moment more, before slumping into his office chair and glancing exhaustedly to the chrono. It is nearly 1 a.m, according to ship time, but there was still so much left to do. The door separating his small bunk area swishes open to reveal a yawning Anakin, unclothed except for a light, low-slung pair of sleep pants and Obi-Wan's discarded robe, and he knows it is his, not Anakin's, because his are never stained with engine grease. He scratches sleepily at his neck, hooded eyes brightening as he spots Obi-Wan. He lopes over and draws Obi-Wan to his feet, peppering his face with kisses as he draws him back into the bunk area.
Anakin! Obi-Wan protests. Weakly. I have to. Whatever it is, I'm sure it can wait until morning.
Anakin murmurs. He drapes both arms over Obi-Wan's shoulders, crossing his wrists over each other, and gives Obi-Wan a pout.
I stayed up late to wait for you, but you never came.
Obi-Wan swallows as Anakin looks expectantly at him.
I'll be in shortly. I just need to finish a few more items. Don't give me that look, it's important. I need Cody to divert the Negotiator and the Resolute to Kiros. New orders from the Council. Your mother, actually. One of her contacts reported a Dooku sighting shortly before going dark.
Okay, that does actually sound important. Anakin says, moving away from Obi-Wan reluctantly and turning around to return to the bedroom.
I'll leave you to it. But before you start in on that insane pile of paperwork, you should know.
He pauses in the doorway and smirks at Obi-Wan over his shoulder.
I spent all evening getting a special surprise ready for you. You wouldn't want to put all my planning to waste now, would you? Surprise? Well, I can't tell you. That's kind of the point of a surprise. Think of it as an incentive of sorts. The faster you come to bed, the faster you'll find out.
Obi-Wan has never rushed Cody through a debriefing call so fast. It's totally worth it. Despite the late hour he finally gets to bed, Obi-Wan wakes up unsettling early the next morning. In space, there is no sunlight, no changing skies, no true indicators, and so all Obi-Wan's body has to go off of is his already insane schedule. He sits upright and leans back against the wall, studying Anakin with a pensive air. The other man lays on his stomach in his, bunk, spread-eagled and languid-limbed, as the cold starlight from the small window highlights his torso. He has long wondered what exactly Anakin gets out of their arrangement. Unlike Obi-Wan, he has the time and good looks to get anyone he wants. Obi-Wan knows several troopers who would happily take his place, should Anakin but say the word. For a while now, he's begun to suspect that it is experience that Anakin values. The younger man seems inordinately concerned about making sure their sex life is never boring, always suggesting all manner of new activities and worriedly reassuring Obi-Wan that he is always open to anything Obi-Wan wants to try. This is not bad, per se, but the problem is that Obi-Wan knows Anakin, recognizes this sort of singular drive to learn, practice, improve, and become the best all too well. Anakin is training for something, or rather, someone. The worst part of it is that in some way he's always known he's just a replacement for Anakin's mysterious crush. Though, is it really fair to call it a crush when it's clearly persisted for so long? He doesn't think Anakin is aware of the way he projects when they're together, and in any other situation, Obi-Wan would be filled with insane smugness at the thought that he can make his partner lose control like that. But Obi-Wan has caught enough stray thoughts to piece it together and confirm his worst fears. Last night, or earlier this morning, depending on how you look at it, only seems to further confirm his hunch. Don't say it. Don't say it. Not the same. Good enough. It has to be enough. Yeah, Force help him, but Obi-Wan has never ever loathed another being so much. At least not one who has done so little to actually warrant it. And like all his feelings regarding his attachment to Anakin, it's so much harder to grapple with and release into the Force. He can barely contain the seething, visceral hatred he feels every time he is reminded that he is not enough, that despite everything, some mystery interloper still maintains such sway over Anakin that he thinks about this other man while in bed with Obi-Wan!
Obi-Wan clenches his teeth in a very un-Jedi-like fashion. Anakin shifts, rolling over a little eyebrow furrowing. He can likely sense Obi-Wan's emotional turmoil even deeply asleep. This, more than anything else, inspires Obi-Wan to finally rein in his spiraling emotions. Obi-Wan readjusts the blanket to better cover him and runs a hand over Anakin's shoulder, hovering just a few centimeters from the surface of his skin and using the Force to soothe him back to sleep. Once Anakin's breathing has evened out once more, he turns back to his thoughts. Anakin doesn't speak much of his so-called crush, and so even years later, Obi-Wan really only knows 3 things about the other man. 1, that he is a man. 2, that he is another Jedi. And 3, most galling of all, at some point, he has turned down Anakin. Who was this idiotic nerf herder? Just who did he think he was to throw away the adoration of Anakin Skywalker to be offered everything Obi-Wan wants on his silver platter and just discard it? Obi-Wan straightens almost imperceptibly, careful not to disturb Anakin, but unable to fully contain the physical reaction that his sudden epiphany inspires. That was the key. Anakin was here with Obi-Wan precisely because this other man was unavailable, because he had rejected Anakin. He's thrown his chance away, doesn't know or care that he still could win the whole game, that Anakin would drop everything and come running if only he said the word. Anakin doesn't have to make a choice, because right now Obi-Wan is his only option. As long as that remains the case, as long as Obi-Wan can keep him occupied and satisfied and away from whoever this other Jedi is, then all he needs is patience. Anakin doesn't think of him in quite in the same way, but surely eventually he will come to see that a reliable, steady relationship with a close friend who would never betray his trust is far preferable to a few cold crips with someone who clearly doesn't return his devotion. Obi-Wan nods to himself and thinks that he could content himself very well with such a state of affairs. After all, he thinks with a slightly bitter smile, Obi-Wan Kenobi is quite used to not being anyone's first choice. Not his masters, not his padawans, and apparently not even his lovers. Obi-Wan. Anakin's voice is sleepy, confused. Obi-Wan carefully pastes on a calm, warm smile and glances down to meet Anakin's eyes. Is it already morning? Obi-Wan hums in confirmation. Anakin raises his hands above his head, stretching out his shoulders and cracking his neck side to side as he sits up and looks over to the chrono. Intruder! He curses, climbing over Obi-Wan in a mad scramble of limbs. He falls onto the floor and begins to gather up his robes in a hurried rush, flying to put his tabards on in all the wrong order. Obi-Wan watches the scene with a sort of painfully fond exasperation. Important meeting? Ahsoka, Anakin explains, hopping around as he pulls his boots on. Didn't you just give her an hour-long lecture on punctuality? Obi-Wan asks, amused. Anakin shoots him an annoyed look. Exactly. I can't be late, not after that lecture. She'll never let me hear the end of it. Based on our bond, she's still only half awake and moving sluggishly. If you rush, you might still have a chance. We're meeting on the Resolute, Anakin says bleakly. Oh, well, in that case, you have my condolences. Have a nice sprint to the hangar, Obi-Wan calls out laughing as Anakin rushes out of his quarters. Kyros is quiet. Too quiet, Obi-Wan realizes with a sinking heart. They've successfully repelled the first round of droids, but as usual, this has just brought the Separatist commander enough time to flee to a much better fortified, heavily guarded position. Separatist commanders are depressingly predictable. Sir, Commander Cody calls out, striding over quickly and pulling Obi-Wan away from his conversation with Rex as Anakin, Ahsoka, and R2. In his head, he's always thought of them as the 3 A's of chaos, since having all 3 of them in one place is the surest way to upend all of Obi-Wan's carefully laid out plans. Stand a few feet away. The Separatist commander, Darth Dinar, is asking for you.
He presses a button, and a recording of a tall, muscular Zygerian blooms to life, his arms crossed imperiously, and canines flashing dangerously.
Master Kenobi, come to the tower. We will negotiate terms of surrender,
He declares, the recording winking out as quickly as it appeared.
Well,
Obi-Wan says, equal parts pleasantly surprised and instantly suspicious.
that was easy.
The comm unit is ripped from Cody's hand by the Force, and Obi-Wan whips his head to the side, only to see Anakin's furious countenance and Ahsoka's shocked reactions.
Slaver scum!
He snarls, the comm flying into his hand as he crushes it between his fingers.
I'll show him surrender, as if a Nigerian ever showed the same courtesy to anyone else. He specifically asked for me,
Obi-Wan reminds him. Anakin snorts.
as if it isn't all a big trap anyway. You can't seriously be... No, you are. You are. Well, if it is a trap, the easiest way to see what he has in store is just to ask him,
Obi-Wan says in what he thinks is a very reasonable tone.
I can go up and distract him until you all deal with whatever he springs on us. There, look, we already have a plan in place. Sir,
Cody says, sounding pained.
that's not a plan. Nonsense, we've done it before to great effect. I should be there with you. Anakin,
Obi-Wan interrupts, shaking his head.
he didn't ask for you for a reason. If he's Zygerian, he probably recognizes the meaning of Skywalker. Zygerians are known for being proud. He likely thinks it beneath him to talk to a former slave. So, if we want to distract him, we need to keep him engaged, talking, and he won't do that with you there. Besides, I need you out here to deal with whatever chaos he unleashes. Let me do my part, and I will let you do yours.
Fine, Anakin growls, throwing the destroyed comm to the ground as he stomps away, just barely missing R2, who rolls out of the way at the last second.
But don't you dare let him escape. I want to deal with that slaver myself.
Ahsoka, Cody, and Rex watch it go, Ahsoka's eyes wide as saucers.
Ahsoka, can you...
Keep an eye on him? Yeah, sure. She agrees immediately, bopping R2 on the head and rushing to follow after him. R2 trundles after them with a worried wheeble.
Cody, Rex, can you...
Keep an eye on both of them. Cody finishes, archly. Obi-Wan sighs and nods.
Of course, General Kenobi. Very well. It seems I have an appointment to make.
The droids at the base of the tower let him pass without any trouble, as do the ones stationed periodically around the endless stairs leading up to the top of the tower. Once he's nearly at the top, right outside the doors to what he thinks is the governor's office, he takes a moment to compose himself. Obi-Wan puts on a sheepish look and raises his hands in a universal gesture of surrender as he enters. One of the droids shoves at his shoulder with the butt of its blaster, and Obi-Wan shoots it an incredulous look. How rude! He turns his attention to the Zygerian, even larger in person, his lilac skin cast in strange shadows by the sunlight filtering through a large window at the opposite end of the room.
Well, hello there.
Obi-Wan greets, cheerily. Dinar turns away from his study of the scene unfolding outside of the window. He scowls and flashes his sharp canines once more at Obi-Wan.
Hello, Jedi,
he responds, tone dripping with disdain. When he doesn't continue, Obi-Wan sighs to himself. He dislikes the stoic silent ones. It's always so much harder to distract them when they won't engage with him verbally. He usually has to resort to baiting them into fisticuffs of some sort, and it's so uncivilized.
I believe you asked me here to discuss the term of your surrender,
he prods, trying once more to bait Dinar into monologuing. Sure enough, Dinar's eyes flash, and Obi-Wan smiles internally victorious. He gives Anakin a poke across the bond, giving him a heads up as he lowers his arms and smoothly, discreetly activates the comm on his vambrace so that the rest of his conversation with Dinar is transmitted.
My surrender. No, Jedi, I asked you here to discuss the terms of your surrender,
he says with a snarling sort of chuckle.
You are entirely surrounded and have no air support for evacuation,
Obi-Wan points out mildly.
I do not quite see why I should be surrendering. Unless, of course, you were to offer me something terribly valuable in return, such as, say, the location of the colonists.
Ah, you Jedi are so predictable, but I think you'll come around to my point of view. He removes a thin detonator from his pocket and clicks the red button at the top. There's a ferocious boom, and the entire tower begins to shake. Obi-Wan runs to the window just in time to see the furious activity of the Republic forces below, running to and fro across a scar in the landscape, trying to put out fires and move wounded out of the blast radius.
There were not colonists at that location, but I can't make promises for the other 8.
Dinar laughs cruelly. Did you get that? Obi-Wan asks across the pond. Anakin's side is grim, focused. Yep, 8 bombs. R2's already on it. How much longer do you think you can keep him occupied? Oh well, I sense he's not one for conversation, but I do have other methods. Obi-Wan responds with a distasteful girl to his words. Come to the tower whenever you're finished. I don't think I'll be able to answer my comms for a little while. There's approximately 20 droids guarding the staircase itself, all stationed behind bends and curves in the stairs themselves. Be careful on the way up. That is a strong incentive, Obi-Wan admits out loud, turning his attention back to Dinar. He unclips his lightsaber from his belt and sets it down on the desk in front of him. Dinar watches him with a sharp, amused interest in his feline-like eyes.
What is this?
Oh, I was simply trying to simplify things. Bombs, lightsabers, these are all rather indirect ways of getting what we both want. But if instead we were to resolve this in the Zygerian manner? He raises his fist in a loose fighting stance.
Interesting,
Dinar responds. He's unable to hide the hunger in his eyes or the way his excitement floods the force around him. He is certain of his victory and simply can't wait to begin pummeling Obi-Wan into the ground. If you win, you get to take me prisoner. I have no doubt you have your orders from Count Dooku and the satisfaction of having defeated High General Kenobi, Jedi Master. If I win, you will leave this planet quietly and give me the location of the colonists.
Oh, how I will it to breaking you the way you Jedi broke the Zygerian slave empire,
Dinar declares, striding over quickly and throwing an overpowered punch as his opening move. Obi-Wan sees it coming and fights the urge to duck. Cowards like this were never very interested in a fair fight. If he actually ducked and weaved as he was capable of, Dinar would quickly lose interest and break out some other way to get what he wanted, whether that was more bombs, a blaster, or the droids. The blow slams into Obi-Wan like a charging bantha and sends him flying. He lands on the floor with a thud and exaggerates, well, not much of an exaggeration, even with his added force healing factor that hurt, his injury pushing himself up slowly. Come on, Anakin, hurry up, Obi-Wan mutters to himself as he winces at the bruise already blooming across his sternum. They trade blows back and forth for a while. Half-hearted on Obi-Wan's end, and not at all half-hearted on Dinar's end. Obi-Wan becomes a little better at timing his own dodges, listening to the Force warning screams, waiting just a millisecond too long, and then darting to the side so that he is still caught by the punch or kick, but only in a glancing blow that greatly reduces the force behind each hit. He's thrown clear across the room with the next blow, and he fakes exhaustion, terrible injury, allowing Dinar time to stomp across the room and reach down and wrap his fingers around Obi-Wan's throat. With this leverage, Dinar drags him to a standing position.
I would kill you now,
Dinar hisses, bringing his face closer to Obi-Wan's and continuing to press his fingers even tighter against his neck.
But Dooku wants you on your knees.
Slowly, surely, Dinar begins to raise him even further into the air, eyes glinting in triumph, and Obi-Wan feels a brief flare of annoyance. Well, this is inconvenient. He's supposed to be playing helpless, dragging this farce out as long as possible, but at some point the lack of air is going to force Obi-Wan to act.
Sir,
one of the spindly droids speaks up in its croaky voice.
What? What could possibly be so important that you had to interrupt my triumph over the Jedi?
Dinar snarls. His arm moves and Obi-Wan sways like a rag doll.
That's what I was trying to...
He's interrupted by a crunch of its circuits, tossed heedlessly aside to reveal Anakin standing at the top of the stairs, his fist clenched in a forced grip and his face twisted into a dark parody of its usually animated open self. Slaver! Anakin snarls, releasing his grip on the droid and stalking forward. Dinar looks down his nose at him.
Skywalker,
Dinar growls, rolling the syllables of Anakin's name in a way Obi-Wan's never heard before.
How dare you?
Dinar drops Obi-Wan abruptly, hands flying to his own throat as Anakin raises his fist and clenches.
Obi-Wan collapses to the floor ungracefully, inhaling oxygen deeply, greedily, as his arms tremble with the effort of holding himself up. Dinar is dangling just a few millimeters off the ground with the strength of Anakin's force hold, the tips of his toes just barely brushing against the ground as he fruitlessly tries to find some leverage. Not so triumphant now, are you? Not without your bombs to hide behind. Anakin spits, his face suffused with dark satisfaction. That's the problem with you slavers, only as strong as the whip in your hands. Anakin throws his hand out, slamming Dinar first into one wall, then the next. A droid tries to stop him, but Anakin just deactivates it and all its brethren with a flick of his chin. He must have done something to the electronics because as the droids sputter and grind to a halt, all of the locks in the cages fail, and the room is immediately filled with dozens of screeching, clawing, clacking animals in various states of jubilation and panic. Obi-Wan stares in horror at the scene unfolding before him. He has always known of Anakin's power, had trained him day in and day out for many years, but this is something different. You will never hurt him again. You'll never hurt anybody ever again. Anakin? Obi-Wan croaks out, scrambling to his feet to stand in between Anakin and Dinar. Anakin, stop! For a split second, Obi-Wan thinks it has worked. He can see the storm across Anakin's face slowly, reluctantly pulling back, his eyes growing less wild with every heartbeat. Then he feels a blaster at his temple and a growling voice near his ear. Oh, you craving idiots! Obi-Wan wants to groan out loud as the rage reignites in Anakin's features. Knowingly or unknowingly, the Zygerian has chosen the one path of action that even Obi-Wan can't save him from. Anakin does not tolerate threats to his friends. At all! And with a twist of Anakin's fingers, the Zygerian is dead, his limbs near Obi-Wan going lax and his body falling backwards. Obi-Wan whirls around and away, neatly ducking the now harmless blaster. He and Anakin are now the only ones left, breathing heavily and staring at Dinar's limp corpse. This is, of course, when the clones arrive, storming up the stairs and into the room in a mad sprint. Ahsoka and Rex leading the charge, skid to a halt as they take in the tableau in front of them. What? Ahsoka's eyes flick to Dinar and then to Anakin. She opens her mouth to finish the question, then swallows. I killed him, Obi-Wan says calmly, stepping forward. Ahsoka, Cody, Rex, and Anakin all give him incredulous looks. Dinar was holding a blaster to my head. I did not have any other way to eliminate the threat. We will have to find another way to locate the missing Togruta colonists. There is a long, awkward silence. Very well, sir, Cody finally says. We'll do a final sweep of the colony and then meet you back aboard the Negotiator. What was that? Anakin hisses as they descend the stairs together. Why did you lie to them? Because, Obi-Wan replies, his voice low as he whirls around. Too many of the Separatist commanders you'll send after end up dead. Do you really think that the Council won't notice the pattern at some point? There was no reason for you to kill Dinar like that. You could have de-escalated the situation. Not without endangering your life, Anakin insists. It was the easiest solution. For Force's sake, Anakin, I'm a Jedi! I was hardly in any real danger. If you had just paused for a moment, had let me help, I could have knocked his blaster away and we could have subdued him together. It may have been easy, but you know it wasn't right, and it certainly didn't help those missing colonists. He stands his ground and stares severely at Anakin, projecting his disquiet and disappointment. Across the bond, he tries to share the horror that witnessing Anakin's unhinged rage had inspired in him, the way the very core of his being had been shaken. Anakin hunches his shoulders, begins to look a little shamefaced. I know. You're right, I wasn't thinking. I let my anger get the better of me. Obi-Wan immediately softens at this expression of contrition. He can feel the sincerity of Anakin's declaration, the dark cloud across his mind slowly receding. He extends a hand to Anakin's shoulder, offering his former padawan his support, as the words continue to spew out. I just want the war to end. The Jedi hold us to this impossible standard. How are we not supposed to kill anyone in the middle of a war? And meanwhile, the Senate shake their heads at our outdated ideals and demand to know why we won't act more decisively to end this war. I want the war to end too, dear one, he says gently. But I would argue that bringing the war to a swift end through so-called decisive action would only have the Separatists a much greater victory. I know I'm not always the Jedi I should be, Anakin says, hanging his head, but I'll be better, I swear. I know, dear one, I understand, I do. Which is why the council doesn't need to know. I will handle the report, and then let this be the last time we speak of this, yes? Anakin nods slowly, and Obi-Wan continues. Come, it's back to the ship for us. We'll have to start piecing together some sort of plan to figure out where they took the colonists. It takes over half a day to finish scanning the system before they must finally reluctantly admit that wherever Dinar hid the colonists, it certainly wasn't anywhere in this system. Unfortunately, this leaves Agiria as the next most viable option and raises a whole other host of problems. They eventually come up with enough of an acceptable plan to warrant reaching out to Shmi and updating her on the situation. Well, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and Rex come up with a plan while Cody protests vociferously. Obi-Wan and Anakin shuffle a little ways away on the bridge and leave Cody, Rex, and Ahsoka to continue arguing over the final details.
Obi-Wan, Annie, it is so good to see you both in good health,
Shmi says once they finally do manage to calm her, the connection rough and tenuous this far out. Her face is deeply creased with worry.
When you didn't calm me for so long, I began to worry. How is Rushdie?
We haven't located Rushdie and the other colonists. Not yet. Obi-Wan begins.
Oh, are they dead?
She throws her shoulders back and braces for the worst. No, we don't think so. We swept the whole planet and found not a single body. If they have been killed, why bother to take the bodies with them? I think they were forcibly located to where exactly we haven't yet determined.
What? What could Dooku have possibly done with them?
It appears that the Zygerians were involved somehow, Obi-Wan says hesitantly. Shmi's face visibly falls. Don't worry, Mom. We already have a plan for an undercover search and rescue mission. Anakin rushes to reassure her. We'll figure out where the slavers took them.
Undercover mission? To where? Zygeria?
Yes, Dinar was close to the Queen. We just need to get into her inner circle. I know Hatice I can pass as a slaver.
You're also one of the best-known Republic generals in the galaxy, with your face plastered over every hollow from here to wild space.
Shmi cuts him off aghast.
If even a child on Tatooine could recognize you, the Queen will figure you out in a second.
It's risky, yes, Obi-Wan interjects, but someone needs to do it. Dinar met an unfortunate end before we could question him. Don't worry, the rest of the fleet will be parked a short distance away as backup. And we'll have a small contingent of clones with us.
No,
Shmi says sharply. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan immediately fall into wide-eyed silence, and she sighs.
No. No, just no. I don't care what precautions you take, what insane Jedi powers you're planning to use. That's an absolutely terrible plan. Let's ignore the fact that everyone will immediately recognize the negotiator and the hero with no fear at first sight. You somehow believe that taking in a group of men who, by the way, have little to no training in undercover work, who will look exactly like every single clone soldier the Zygerians and their associates have ever run into, will somehow make you less recognizable?
Well,
no, I'll send my own operatives instead. As you can imagine, the free peoples of Tatooine have a dedicated interest in the activities of some of the galaxy's most notorious slavers. We already have a handful of spies already on the ground, and with a few more operatives to help with the execution, they should be well positioned to find Rushdie and his people.
Will you at least accept a small contingent of clones as help? Obi-Wan presses, worried. He wouldn't put it past me to personally join the mission. The Open Circle fleet would be more than happy to provide whatever firepower and transport you need.
I won't say no to that. Having a good extraction team will be critical, and it won't require them to do any undercover work. Very well.
Cody! Obi-Wan calls out. The clone commander immediately joins them, barking out a terse, worried. Yes, sir. Shmi here will be taking over the search for the missing colonists. Please make sure that she receives whatever support necessary to ensure her success. I am placing you in sole command of any further action, but I'd recommend taking Ghost Company with you. This seems like a job requiring a little more subtlety than Domino Company is capable of. Agreed, sir. Are you no longer headed to Zygeria, then?
No, Shmi interjects firmly. My operatives and I have much more experience with this sort of thing than you. I aim only to rely on your men for help evacuating the colonists once we have found them.
Ah, Cody says, relaxing. Thank you for somehow managing to talk them out of that insanity. He continues fervently. Obi-Wan gives him a betrayed look, and Shmi laughs.
Oh, Obi-Wan, you should listen to your commander more often. It sounds like he understands the definition of undercover work far better than you.
The next hour is spent hashing out the details of the operation, selecting specific code words, and carefully plotting out contingencies. At the end of that hour, Shmi bids them all a brusque goodbye, her mind clearly already focused on Roshti and the colonists. Obi-Wan rolls his shoulders back from their hunch as his stomach gives an embarrassing growl. Cody's eyes immediately snapped at him, narrowed. I think I'm feeling hungry. Aren't you, brother? He asks Rex, eyes still trained accusingly on Obi-Wan. Oh, definitely. Rex chimes in, turning to Ahsoka, who is trying very hard to keep a straight face, as she nods solemnly. I think it's time for dinner, don't you? Anakin glances at his vambrace, then slaps Rex on the back. I've got some comm calls to take care of. Meet you in the commissary. He asks. Of course, sir. I'll snag you a tray. Rex responds, and with a nod, Anakin disappears. Obi-Wan watches him go, a worried tilt of his brows. If I had tried to wriggle out of dinner like that, you both would have cried bloody murder, but he gets let go with not a single complaint, Obi-Wan demands, both worried for Anakin and a little insulted that the clones seem to have decided that out of their two generals, it is Obi-Wan that needs babysitting. Oh, don't worry, he'll be along in a bit, Rex replies with a wave of his hand. General Skywalker has a lot of problems, but forgetting to eat is definitely not one of them. He just tries to set aside some time each month to keep in touch with his friends on Coruscant. Those calls never take very long. Their group makes their way to the commissary, and they are joined shortly by Waxer and Boyle. Obi-Wan is very pleased. He hasn't seen the two men in what seems like forever, and he relishes a chance to catch up. Almost pleased enough not to grimace when a glob of something is deposited onto his tray by one of the servers. His aversion to the commissary food always makes him feel like such a fuzzy prig, especially surrounded by the clones who have never known anything different, and Anakin, who would happily swallow a bug if the mood struck him. Ahsoka is the only one who seems to share his reservations, raised on the same simple but well-made temple food as Obi-Wan was, but she is also a teenager in the midst of a growth spurt, and so not even those reservations can hold her hunger in check for very long. They settle themselves into one of the long, thin cafeteria-style tables, everyone else digging in with gusto as Obi-Wan picks half-heartedly at the edges of his tray. Is it true you baited a Zygerian in unarmed combat, sir? Waxer asks eagerly, curiously. I heard they have 2 times the strength of humans. 2.5, Obi-Wan corrects. Waxer's and Boyle's eyes go wide. Whoa, that's so cool. I'm sure it looked a lot less cool in person. I was mostly just allowing him to toss me back and forth. I couldn't exactly fight back and risk turning his attention back to you. Still, it was very brave, Waxer says. Cody snorts, though he raises no verbal objection. I knew you'd all pull through eventually, Obi-Wan demurs. Though, if I may say, you do seem to be losing your touch. It certainly took you long enough. Hey! Ahsoka says defensively. Some of those bombs were guarded by droidicas too. Oh, like a big bad Jedi like you can handle a few droids. Boyle teases. Rex puffs up his chest at the insult to his commander, and Ahsoka giggles at the display. Thus begins a good-natured round of competition, as the clones and Ahsoka each try to one-up each other with tales of droids killed. Obi-Wan stares at his plate and allows their debate on whether taking a tactical droid should warrant extra points. The consensus seems to be that while the droids themselves were relatively helpless in one-on-one combat, they are usually guarded by and controlling much more powerful droids, so really destroying one should count for at least 2 points, potentially more depending on the circumstances. Finish your call with the Chancellor, sir? Rex asks suddenly. Obi-Wan looks up sharply from his study of whatever half-measured nonsense the commissary is calling dinner tonight. At first he is sure he must have misheard. Rex doesn't sound like he's joking, but there's no way... But the way Anakin freezes in place guiltily quickly dispels that thought. Anakin recovers quickly, answering Rex's question with some response that Obi-Wan doesn't process, as he settles himself down in the empty spot beside Obi-Wan and begins stuffing his face with the food Rex grabbed for him. Obi-Wan manages to contain himself. Just barely, though he is distracted the whole meal, his quibs half-hearted at best. The troopers seem to recognize his distraction and its source, but say nothing. They even jump in, redirecting the conversation and filling in the gaps to Obi-Wan's responses when necessary, keeping the conversation going mostly by themselves, bless their hearts. Ahsoka sneaks them both small glances when she thinks they're not looking, but dares say nothing. And then they finish up dinner and return to his quarters, where the dam bursts. "I thought," Obi-Wan begins quietly once the door's closed, "you said it was just small talk in the Senate hallways." Even his soft voice feels like the loudest of booms across the strange silence. "I mean, it was, but then..." Anakin trails off and shrugs helplessly. "But then what, Anakin?" Obi-Wan demands sharply. "How did you go from that to monthly comm calls? How?" "See, this is why I didn't tell you," Anakin groans, flopping back onto the bunk. "I knew you'd freak out." "Freak out? Freak out? Would you ever leave Ahsoka alone with him?" "No, of course not." Anakin's response is immediate, indignant. "Oh, it's okay for you to protect Ahsoka from a slimy old pedophile?" Obi-Wan throws his words at Anakin with all the finesse of a child slinging mud, too angry and scared to pause and think. "But the minute I try to do the same, it's freaking out!" "Ahsoka is a child. I'm not. And I know better now. It's not like before when I believed he was my friend. I know what to look out for, where to draw the line. It's just a calculated risk." "Calculated?" Obi-Wan sputters. In the course of knowing Anakin Skywalker, there have been innumerable moments that really, truly tested Obi-Wan's Jedi calm patience, but not like this. "That makes it sound like you think there's some sort of reward involved. What possible reward could justify throwing yourself in the path of a man who has repeatedly shown such an unhealthy interest in you?" "He's the Chancellor of the Republic, Obi-Wan, the Supreme Commander of the Gar," Anakin replies with a roll of his eyes as if he thinks Obi-Wan is being deliberately dense. "Having him on our side can only be a good thing. And if all I have to do is sit through some fairly creepy flirting, well, that's nothing." "So you do admit he's creepy?" Obi-Wan throws his hands up in the air. "Stop doing your negotiator thing," Anakin says, eyes narrowed and voice full of annoyance. "You know I hate it when you twist my words. Anakin, just stop and think this through. Do you even hear what you sound like?" "No," Anakin responds stubbornly. "I have thought it through, and it's already paid off. Remember when Ahsoka had that weird vision about Padme getting assassinated at the Aldera conference? The Chancellor was the one who approved the redistribution of resources necessary to get me and her assigned to the conference's security. Or that time you were injured and we didn't have enough high-grade Bacta. You were in so much pain, I could tell, even if you didn't say anything, and I knew you weren't going to accept anything when we were still rationing. The Chancellor rushed the approval process for resupply and transport. We got those shipments a whole 2 months early. And what happens when the next redistribution of resources comes with an asterisk? When flirting isn't enough to get you what you want anymore?" "It won't come to that," Anakin insists. He pauses, then shrugs his shoulders. "I'm pretty sure he's important or something, and just gets a weird thrill out of flirting with me and asking about my sex life. I have no idea where to even start with that," Obi-Wan sighs. "You talk about your sex life with him? About us? Oh, force no. He's just dropped a couple of leading questions and I played dumb. He definitely thought I was criffing Padme at some point. Maybe he still thinks that, I don't know. I try not to think about it, to be honest. And despite all of that, you're still going to insist on going ahead with this insanity." At Anakin's nod, Obi-Wan swallows and turns his face to stare at the wall. "I know I no longer have any right to make demands of you. Even when I was your master, you were never good at listening to me. But Anakin, I am begging you, please, listen to me just this once. I understand that you think you have the situation in hand for now, but it would take so little to send it all spinning out of your control. You must stop this while you still can." "I'll keep that in mind," Anakin promises earnestly. "That wasn't exactly a yes or no, dear one." "It wasn't meant to be. How often do you talk?" Obi-Wan asks, changing tack suddenly. The war has taught him to recognize the bitter taste of an impossible stalemate all too easily. 3 or 2 times a month, more if I happen to be on Coruscant. Can you at least agree to decrease that to, say, once a month? Use the war as an excuse. Say I've assigned you more responsibilities, what with the Outer Rim sieges going on as they have. If I agree, will you drop it?" At Obi-Wan's reluctant nod, he shrugs. "Sure." Anakin extends a hand and wraps his fingers around Obi-Wan's belt. His eyes turn mischievous. Mischievous.
Now that's out of the way. No! What? Seriously?
Anakin's voice whiplashes from low and seductive to high and confused in an instant.
Yes! Seriously!
Obi-Wan bites out.
Funnily enough, the in-depth discussion of your ongoing relationship with your childhood abuser didn't exactly put me in the mood. Attempted abuser,
Anakin corrects thoughtlessly.
Ah, yes, that makes it so much better.
Obi-Wan snarks back.
My point stands. I can't, not tonight.
Oh. Anakin's hand falls away awkwardly and he suddenly looks guarded.
Do you want me to go?
Obi-Wan hesitates. Ever since they started this arrangement, he and Anakin have rarely slept alone. Whether it's in his bunk, Anakin's, or their various shared tents and other accommodations in the field. It's terrifying how quickly he's gotten used to this new normal. How much he's come to expect and rely on Anakin's presence to keep the memories of battle, death, and blood at bay. For some reason, it's much easier to keep clear-headed and calm when he tells himself he must be ready to chase away Anakin's own tormented dreams. He suspects Anakin employs a similar technique, though they've never explicitly discussed it. Some days he feels as if they are two precariously balanced pillars of an old bridge, leaning on each other more and more as the rest of the bridge crumbles away, until the only thing keeping them standing is each other.
No, actually.
He pauses, followed by a hopeful look from Anakin.
It gets quite chilly, shipside, particularly at night.
When he dares to glance up, Anakin's eyes are soft. Later that night, Obi-Wan finds himself staring out the wall, his mind alert, on edge, and not the least bit willing to let him sleep. Anakin is curled tightly around him, every inch of his front pressed to every inch of Obi-Wan's, breathing deeply, gently. But despite hours of trying to calm his racing thoughts, Obi-Wan cannot join him in sleep. Obi-Wan begins to slide away out of the protective cradle of Anakin's body, slow and careful so as not to wake his partner. Anakin's arms around him tighten briefly, but loosen with a few well-placed soothing brushes of his mind across Anakin's. Finally, Obi-Wan is fully free and able to slip away. He tiptoes soundlessly to the door of his quarters and quickly makes his way into the hallway and then to the conveniently located supply closet right across from his quarters. He knows the location of this particular closet all too well from the way too many times Anakin's impatience has been so great when he could not even wait the 3 seconds more it would have taken to enter Obi-Wan's room. He settles inside, choosing a spot that will still allow him to keep an eye on the door to his quarters. He withdraws his comm from the folds of his robes. His contact picks up after the first 2 rings, looking uncharacteristically harried and sleep-muzzed, and he feels briefly guilty for forgetting to check the time on Coruscant.
Master Kenobi, is everything all right?
Senator Amidala asks, sounding confused. When he doesn't immediately answer, a slim hand flies to her mouth.
Oh no! Is Anakin...
Oh, no, he's fine. Well, as fine as any of us can be given this war. Forgive me.
Obi-Wan hastily corrects. Her shoulders relax a tad, though her brow remains tightly furrowed.
But this isn't just a social call, is it?
She guesses, shrewdly.
No, I need your help.
Of course, whatever you need.
It's no simple favor,
he warns.
You'll likely make some enemies, and I can't say for certain how they'll retaliate.
I believe I said, whatever you need.
Senator Amidala replies.
What seems to be the issue?
There's a politician, currently in the Senate, who has in the past made overtures to an underage padawan.
What?
Senator Amidala sits up straighter, outrage and frantic worry oozing out of every pore.
Is Ahsoka okay?
Forgive me, Anakin.
It wasn't Ahsoka,
Obi-Wan says evenly. He doesn't say anything more. He doesn't need to. Senator Amidala looks confused for only a moment more before recognition dawns and her eyes harden. He continues,
The council intervened before it was too late, and for a long time I contented myself with that. But no longer. The politician in question is trying to worm his way back in.
I take it there's little proof or recourse for legal action.
Yes.
Of course. What shall it be? Nasty career-ending rumors? Or something that ends up in the courts? Everyone in the Senate is hiding something. I'm sure I could find something with enough judicious digging.
The latter, Obi-Wan says viciously. I want him to burn.
That can be arranged, she replies without blinking, a short, no-nonsense nod punctuating the sentence. Who shall I be investigating, then?
He's very powerful and well-respected. Going up against him won't be very easy, I'm afraid. But I've seen the memories myself, and I assure you there's no mistake, Obi-Wan warns. As Senator Amidala's expectant look, he braces himself and continues. It's the Chancellor.
There's static silence. The Sheev?
She says, sounding bewildered. In the next heartbeat, her voice turns to Durasteel.
That wrinkly sack of shit! I can't believe I ever trusted him.
I have to admit, I thought it would take a bit more to convince you, Obi-Wan says, blinking.
Bail and I have been growing suspicious of the Chancellor for a long time now, Senator Amidala replies with a sigh. We've even discussed forming a delegation to counter his ever-growing emergency powers. Oh, he talks a good game whenever anybody presses him, I'll give him that. But if you just take a step back and look at what's been happening, he looks a lot like just another power-hungry politician. Men like that enjoy power in all its forms, and well, these sorts of things are just another way to demonstrate their power over someone else. It's less out of character than I would have once believed, unfortunately.
Do you think you'll still be able to help?
I won't lie, this does make any digging I do a lot harder. This won't just be some light sifting. I'll need to really break out the shovel.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize, she reassures him with a wave. This is exactly the sort of wake-up call Bail and I needed. These things take time. Far better to start now than to lose another year of dithering.
Where will you start?
Where else? The money.
Senator Amidala looks to the side, mouth pinched.
Assault, prostitution, drugs, even illegally invading a peaceful sovereign planet. This can all be twisted around, softened, explained away, easily forgiven. But oh, Shiraya forbids someone misuses those precious tax dollars.
I never did understand how someone of your principles could stand politics, Obi-Wan says with a shake of his head. Doesn't it ever wear you down?
Says the man who would have made an excellent politician.
No, there's no need for insults.
Oh, Master Kenobi, Senator Amidala laughs. It is truly a pity. The Senate is desperately in need of a sense of humor.
I must leave soon, Obi-Wan says seriously once her chuckles have faded away. He glances up to the door to his quarters, still closed and quiet, beyond which Anakin is still sleeping peacefully. I cannot thank you enough for your help, both in the matter of the clone rights bill and now this investigation.
Please, no thank yous necessary. As I've said, whatever I uncover will only help our efforts to rein him in, politically speaking. Besides, he hurt a friend, and that is not something I can let go unanswered. She flashes him a grim, sharp smile that promises retribution.
Obi-Wan is abruptly reminded that this is the same woman who at age 14 made the entire droid army of the Trade Federation bow before her will. She was frighteningly capable and awe-inspiring even then, and now, with over a decade more of political experience, she is positively terrifying. It is almost enough to make you feel the faintest stirrings of pity for Sheev Palpatine. Almost.